Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. We are back at it again with some more Legends of Runeterra content. This time we're going to be playing a very different deck from the previous Elite deck that we played last week, and instead we'll be focusing on the NautKai Toss Sea Monsters deck. Now this is a very late game deck that seeks to get the deck deep as soon as possible by tossing as many cards as you can, and then looking to end the game either by exploiting the deep effects, making all of your sea monsters into absolutely massive creatures, or using the Maokai flip as sort of an alternate win condition in case anything else goes against you. Let's go ahead and take a look at the card by card rundown right here. No reason to wait for introductions. Starting off, of course, at our 1-cost units with Dreg Dredger. Now, this guy's 1/1 for 1, not impressive, but when he's summoned you toss 3, so you can kind of play this guy out as an early sort of blocker, toss 3 cards, and already get started on your path to getting deep. Also in the 1-cost slot, we have Hapless Aristocrat. Now, this doesn't have a ton of synergy with the whole deep strategy, but the reason I like running him is because he is a 1-cost card that I can play easily to chump for me and take a couple of hits. He replaces himself when he dies, so I can get 2 chump blocks out of a single Hapless Aristocrat, and that also means he counts twice for the purposes of Maokai's flip, so that's definitely a good enough reason for me to put him in the deck. Up at the 2 cost, we only have our copies of Thorny Toad here, running 3 copies of him. Now this is a 1/4 for 2, which makes him a very powerful defensive threat that can wear units down, or simply outright kill some 1-cost units without trading himself back in return. And his Last Breath effect tosses 2 and heals my Nexus 2, so even when he does go down, I will heal off a little bit of damage my opponent may have inflicted, and get slightly deeper at the same time, which means I pretty much always value seeing this guy in my hand. Up at the 3-cost mark, we do have 3 copies of Deadbloom Wanderer. This guy is very similar to Dreg Dredgers in that he tosses 3 as he comes down. He's a 3/2 for 3, but the most important thing is he's got lifesteal as well, which again makes it a unit that can sort of heal me off. Even if he's dying, I don't care because I'm getting a little bit of life back, and ideally he's at least trading out with something as well at the same time to really help stall out the game and get me deeper faster. At the 3-cost mark as well, I also have Lure of the Depths. Now, this is a card I've been considering swapping out for a while here, as in some cases, I really never want to see it, especially against an early aggressive deck. This card is an absolute brick because you can't afford the tempo loss by playing it out. But in longer, grindier games, this is a very good card in that regard because it draws you Sea Monster, so thins your deck out a little bit, gets you closer to the deep effect, and it reduces the cost of Sea Monster allies everywhere by 1, allowing you to potentially play multiple Sea Monsters in a turn without the need for your Nautilus to come down first. So in that regard, I like it, but there are some places where it doesn't pay out well for me. Finally, we have the Slaughter Docks at 3 of. Now, this is a really powerful landmark for this deck, as this tosses 1 at the start of every single round, gets you deeper all that much faster, and if you are deep, it replaces itself with a random sea monster, which is incredible effect. I definitely don't mind seeing more than 1 of these if I'm able to sort of play the later, grindier games that this deck thrives on, but especially in the early phases of the game, if I'm getting run down by someone like a Piltover Noxus aggro deck, this will be a dead card in my hand. At the 4-cost mark, we do have the first champion of the deck, Maokai. Now, Maokai doesn't have a ton of synergies with Deep, of course, but he does toss cards and summon Saplings, which allows you to get deeper slightly faster, and Saplings you can kind of use to remove some squishier backline threats like a Fizz or Twisted Fate that aren't attacking, or if they are attacking, you're not able to block them. Saplings can hunt them down and kill them, and also the Saplings dying then helps trigger Maokai's flip effect, which mills your entire opponent's deck and only leaves behind non-champions. So if you're able to get to the Maokai flip, you really have the ability to just kind of end the game off of that, as 4 rounds later, it doesn't matter what the board state looks like, your opponent will lose by not being able to draw any more cards for turn. There are some ways to deal with that. I have actually lost a game with a Maokai flipped on the field, but either way, it's still a good thing to try and strive for and an alternate way for the deck to win. I'm also running 2 copies of Salvage here. This card is amazing because this gets you 4 cards deeper, 2 deep, I should say, because it tosses 2 and then draws you 2 cards. It's not playable in open spell mana, unfortunately, and there are some situations where you can't really afford the tempo loss that this card brings, but unlike Lure of the Depths, this does reload your hand quite nicely, and like I said, 4 cards deeper is significant for this deck that's trying to get deep as fast as possible, so I do like seeing this. And we've got the Beast Below, which is just a 4/4 vanilla for 4, which feels pretty bad to play, but sometimes, especially if you're trying to avoid being run over, this is all you really need, just a 4/4 for 4, so you can go ahead and drop it. And of course, if you do get deep, this is a 7/7 for 4, which is much better. If Nautilus is flipped on the field already, he costs 0, so that really makes Beast Below feel pretty good, so that's why we're running 3 copies. Up at the 5 mana mark, we're starting to get towards the bigger beaters of the deck. We have Abyssal Eye, which is a 3/3 for 5, but it's elusive, so it can perform against some of the elusive threats that are trying to swing in. But I primarily like this guy on offense, as if you're able to get that Nexus Strike off, you draw a card, which again gets you slightly deeper, which I do like to see, and gives you a little bit more value out of Abyssal Eye coming down. We also have Grasp of the Undying and Withering Wail. These are both removal tools in order to help keep me alive a little bit longer and try to stall towards that deep mark. Grasp is better spot removal and especially heals me 3 when it comes down, so it does allow me to kill off some weakened units, or especially some squishier units like Callista or Misfortune, and heal me at the same time, which is really nice, or turn a sort of bigger creature into a potential trade with one of my smaller guys who's blocking it. Withering Wail, meanwhile, is the go wide counter against an opponent who's playing at a lot of low toughness creatures like spiders. Withering Wail will hopefully kill off most of them, or at least allow the rest of my units to trade out nicely, and again, heals me 3 as well, so overall a good card to include. Devourer of the Depths is up at the 6 mana mark. This is a 4/4 for 6, which initially looks bad, but he does obliterate an enemy with less health than him as he comes down. Now that ability is, your opponent can respond to it, so they can deny the ability itself. They can do any amount of damage to Devourer of the Depths in order to either kill him outright or just reduce his toughness so it's no longer greater than the unit he's trying to eat. But if your opponent doesn't have an answer, if they played out their hand, for example, or used all their mana for the turn, Devourer of the Depths can get rid of some of these squishier threats that won't be able to deal with it otherwise. Obviously, if you're deep, he comes down as a 7/7, and there are a lot more things he can eat at that point, so that's why we're running 3 copies, as you can kind of develop your board and remove an opponent's threat at the same time with him. At the 7 mana mark, we have our final champion, which is Nautilus. Now, Nautilus initially looks pretty underwhelming as a 0/12 tough fearsome for 7. He doesn't do a whole lot while he's coming down, so I'll pretty much never play him until I am deep. But when he does level up, I copy at tossed allies that cost 4 or more into the deck. If you're paying attention, that's all of my sea monsters, so I get all of them back, which is really nice. And then he flips into a 13/13 tough fearsome that makes my sea monster allies cost 4 less. This is absolutely amazing, a back-breaking card, and can definitely end games on his own. So I do like having the Nautilus in the deck here for that potential swing. I've also got 2 Shipwreck Hoarder in the deck here up at the 7 mana mark. Now, this is a 7/5, which does mean it can be killed by some smaller creatures that can come down earlier, but when it's summoned, it tosses 2 and creates 2 treasures in your deck. Now, this initially looks like it doesn't do anything towards making progress towards deep, but if I toss 2 to get down to 15 or below, then I will go deep and then create the 2 treasures in the deck, which does mean that my deck gets inflated just a little bit more, so it means I have more turns at deep before I completely deck myself, which is nice. The treasures themselves are also pretty nice. While I don't really care about Treasure Trove too much because it's too random, Plateworm Egg is a game finisher on its own, because if I'm already deep, these are all coming down as 8/8s, which is pretty amazing. And Keel Breaker is a way to clear the field if I'm really having a bad time, in order to just deal 5 to everything, kill them all, and hopefully leave nothing but my sea monsters still alive, as this guy jumps up to a 10/8 if he comes down when I'm already deep. Finally, I'm running 1 copy of Terror of the Tides. Now, this is an 8 mana card. I really don't want to see it outside of late game scenarios, so I definitely don't want to run more than 1 copy of it, but this wins games on its own. It grants all sea monster allies fearsome, and on the attack gives enemies -2/-0. This means that anything with 4 power or less, when this attacks, are not going to be able to block by virtue of the fact that all my sea monsters are fearsome, and they all have 2 power or less, which is an absolutely massive swing. Really, really good card to have, but like I said, I never want to see more than 1 of them. And that's actually going to be it for the card-by-card breakdown here, guys. I'm going to see you guys once we find a game and get into the queue, and we'll see how this deck performs. And here we go, guys. We are looking like we're going to be playing against P2Chan and their Mono Shurima deck here with Azir and Renekton. This is a pretty simple Ascended deck, I would guess, which will start off with that Buried Sun Disk and look to try and win things off the back of its powerful Ascended cards. So definitely a later stage game, a later stage deck, as is mine, but I feel like it definitely does do better than this deck in the later stages of the game by virtue of the strength of the Ascended cards. That is the Buried Sun Disk he just drew there for free, so that will be coming down, and that feels pretty bad. My timer is on, but as long as we can keep his champions from flipping, it's more or less never going to actually get there. And we're opening with the Dreg Dredger, so we're already making a good amount of progress towards our deep already. The draws, though, are not really coming together. Like I said, I'm really not a fan of seeing the Terror of the Tides in my opening hand, but what else can you do? We are going to get that first hit in, and Emperor's Dais is coming down as well. Now, sometimes these Ascended decks have problems with playing out too many units and not getting value from the Sand Soldiers they're summoning, but if he has the Azir here, that will definitely be a good start to his deck. The fact that he hasn't just Windmill Slammed it, though, does make me think he maybe is holding off. Instead, it'll be the Dune Keeper to summon out one of those Sand Soldiers. I will go ahead and throw out the Deadbloom Wanderer here as well, just to get more deep going. I hate to see the Dreg Dredgers getting tossed, but a couple of sea monsters going down as well is pretty nice for me. I think at this point, I don't really care. He is actually going to exhaust the Deadbloom Wanderer, which feels weird to me as we're just going to kind of be trading out across the board. I'm still going to take 2 here from the Sand Soldier, so that does feel pretty bad, and I get no value from lifesteal because I'm already at 20 life. So again, that's sort of a big swing there, but at least I'm clearing the field and keeping my life total relatively healthy here. I do feel like what I can do in order to keep pressure on him is drop the Beast below, as again, it's not a super impressive card on its own, but at least it will defend me and maybe be able to force him to play more cards out. And in fact, this is a free swing for me right here, because he can't actually block with a Renekton or they will trade. He's out of mana, so that is going to be damage I can just take. And obviously, if the Renekton does have something to challenge with, like an Exhaust, for example, he will be able to kill the Beast from below, but I'm not really that concerned about it because it will do a bunch of damage as well. Into this Sandcrafter, which is going to summon attacking Sand Soldier as she swings. I don't like that, so we will drop the Thorny Toad in order to get a little bit of value. And this is going to be 2 Sand Soldiers then swinging. We will block here and block here in order to just trade out with the Sand Soldier and do some damage back to the Sandcrafter in order to try and preserve our life total as much as we can. We do take 2 of every swing of those soldiers, though. And we'll pop the Lure of the Depths here. We'll try to go for a later play of the game. Picking up the Shipwreck Hoarder, which again, not what I want to see, but I can actually drop it on the next turn due to that cost reduction. So maybe Lure of the Depths coming through a little bit clutch for me. We'll have to see. I am going to hold onto this Grasp of the Undying, though. And I don't feel like there's much of a reason for me to try swinging here at all. So I will play the Devourer of the Depths and see if we just can't get that Sandcrafter off the table, as that should be pretty reasonable. He will just let it resolve, no problem. So I do like to see that. Looking at this spell here, Desert's Wrath. His Sand Soldiers will be better, and he'll summon a couple extra Sand Soldiers, making progress towards that Azir level up as well, as he just needs to summon units. But Azir is actually 1 unit away from having the level up. And since he's still sitting on 4 mana, I can't really swing in case of something like Quicksand comes out and just allows him to kill off beasts from below, no problem. We do now have 5-cost Shipwreck Hoarders, though, which is quite nice. And I'm not even going to bother going on the offensive. He's got yet another Sandcrafter, though, so that's actually going to be a ton of units coming my way on the next turn. We'll see if I can't survive. Down to 22 cards, so we will be picking up another here, so down to 21, but still 6 cards away from deep. Not looking too hot for me so far. See if he's got the Azir. If he is able to drop it, that's a pretty bad swing for me, as the Azir will immediately flip, tech his Sundisk down to 9, which does put a bit of a crunch on me, as I will not be able to allow the Renekton to flip at all if I want to stay in the game, but see what he's got. He's sitting on only 4 cards. I do technically have hand advantage, and it's actually going to be the Inspiring Marshal to give all of his guys +2/+0 when he summons another ally, so that does allow him to continue to play a little aggressively here. Thinking about my options, I could opt for the Shipwreck Hoarder, which is something the Renekton cannot deal with, but I think the Nautilus makes a lot of sense as just a sort of beefy card to help sustain me. That's going to be a second Emperor's Dais as well, though. So he's really trying to go for the offensive push here. Nautilus should do a lot, actually, in this situation to keep my health alive, as he won't take a lot of damage from the Sand Soldiers. And actually, here they all go. They are all going to be quite beefy here, so gonna have to try and find some creative ways to trade myself out of this. I think it makes sense to have the Nautilus just block one of the Sand Soldiers to keep himself healthy, and we do want to bother trading out with the Toad here, as he will toss me and get me just slightly deeper. I can't afford to take 10 off of the Sand Soldiers, though, so ultimately we will have to make a lot of trades here. This is going to be the toss from the Thorny Toad into the 2 life heal, which I do like. And unfortunately, we're trading out with a lot of ephemeral units that were going to die anyways, so that's not really that ideal. But the biggest thing here is we have the Nautilus, our life total still looking okay, and now we have the option of going for the Nautilus's Riptide in order to just remove threats. Sitting on 18 left to deep, so I need 1 more card before I can play Shipwreck Hoarder and get deep. So I think it makes sense to just kind of go for some removal here. Get that card out of there, bank the remaining 3 spell mana for the Riptide, and hopefully prevent my opponent from getting one of his Ascended flipped, if at all possible. Maokai Sandspitter will come out instead, which is going to make Nautilus -0, -1, doesn't matter, he already has no power, and vulnerable though, which does mean that he can challenge it and look for potential play. As long as my opponent though doesn't go straight to combat, I do have the option of dropping the Shipwreck Hoarder. He will actually swing with Renekton. I'm expecting Exhaust here to come out. No, that's right, Nautilus is vulnerable. Yeah, he's going to have to try and structure this combat carefully. Oh, that's right. He has all of the Sand Soldiers that will come out, and I don't actually know that there is a way for me to survive this, as this is going to be 9 damage, 12, yeah, so I do have to play out my hand defensively here. We're going to stun the Renekton to get him out, and we're also going to Grasp of the Undying on the Maokai Sandspitter, both to keep Nautilus healthy and in order to top up my own life total for this oncoming onslaught of soldiers. We will drain the 3 out and get the Renekton back in the deck. He's gone. That was a Nautilus's Riptide, of course. And this will hurt quite a decent amount, but I am still going to be in it. I'm not quite dead yet, and we also kept the Nautilus alive. Deadbloom Wanderer now can come down, and this will actually get me deep right off the bat here. So Nautilus will level up here, put all those deep monsters back into the deck that were tossed earlier, and also now I have a very powerful offensive threat to bring to bear. Interesting, he does still have to worry about the Maokai Sandspitter's effect there, but overall, I'm not too concerned, especially knowing that I'm on 10 mana now, and these are now 1-cost Shipwreck Hoarders, so really have the option of going for some aggressive plays here. I think it does make sense to bring out the Terror of the Tides here. There's very little just outright removal in Mono Shurima. He is actually going to go for Desert's Wrath, so he'll have a bunch of basically chump blocks, because they're all going to be 3/1s, but remember, Terror of the Tides will reduce that power, so it doesn't matter, they still will be unable to block, and his board is now getting clogged up by all these landmarks that aren't providing him with a lot of value. Yeah, so he will try to get rid of one of the Emperor's Dioceses in order to have a little bit of value. We'll play out the Maokai here because I can't afford to bring him out, and my opponent's just going to surrender. He knows he doesn't have any way to block here, and that all these sea monsters will just swing in and do way too much damage for him to survive. So really nice execution on this deck. I was feeling the pressure there for a little bit, especially with that sort of Sand Soldier cycling. It's the first time I've seen a deck like that, and that was pretty scary, but we were able to make through it with some smart blocks, some smart healing, and then just ended up actually Lure of the Depths. I know I wasn't very high on it in the initial deck breakdown, but that did really, really well for me, so I can't complain too much. Great card to have in that situation, as it really allowed me to play out all of those big beefy sea monsters, and we pulled it out with this deck, so nice to see how that went. And here we are with Game 2 for today against Killing Guy playing the Nasus Kindred deck. Now, this is actually going to be, this is a pretty scary deck. I actually really don't like this, especially given that Kindred can and will execute my Nautilus if they're able to slay something while Kindred is on the battlefield. So really not looking forward to seeing that, but we have got a decent starting hand here. No Dreg Dredgers to start with, and Maokai Reaper would have rendered that moot regardless because it's fearsome and the Dreg Dredgers couldn't have blocked, but would have liked to have been able to start getting deep right off the bat. Either way, the 1 damage on turn 1 is not too bad of a drop, and we have banked a little bit of spell mana. I'll go ahead, come down to the Thorny Toad. It's 1/4, keep me alive a little bit longer, and he's got the Bark Beast, which I think is a good card in this deck in particular, because if something else dies, which this deck wants to be killing a lot, that's just straight a 3/3, which is really good. Onto the 3 mana, we do have the Undying come down, which is pretty scary, but I actually have a pretty good out for it in the form of the Thorny Toads, as they'll be able to block it without killing it, or without them dying. Now, he's not even going to bother blocking with the Bark Beast, because as I mentioned before, or swing with the Bark Beast, because as I mentioned, I can't kill anything here, so the Bark Beast won't be able to pump up, and so we're going to be able to block off the 2. And actually, now, being at 18 is an okay life total, because these guys will heal me too as they come down. Let's just go ahead and drop off a Slaughterdox here, as that'll start accelerating me towards deep. Now, he is in Shadow Isles, and they do have some options in terms of cards to deal with landmarks, especially the, I don't remember the name of the card, but there's a card where you can sacrifice a unit to destroy a unit or a landmark. That's a super powerful card in this particular matchup, especially knowing that Slaughterdox will get me to that deep that much quicker, but we'll see who he wants to come down with now. And it is going to be the Kindred, which you hate to see that happen, as I don't have a very good answer for them at the moment, and something is going to be dying on this turn. I have no out for it at all, so we're just going to pass and see what they want to do as they come to combat. I would expect a full team swing, except for the Bark Beast, which, yeah, okay, my opponent is going to try and restructure their attack here a little bit, see if they can't get it into a state they want. Still not swinging with the Bark Beast. They're hoping something dies on this turn, and I think actually something probably will, as we're going to be blocking out here. Unfortunately now, Thorny Toad is not actually going to do any damage to Kindred because of the quick attack, so we're just going to go ahead and see how this combat works. It will be 3 damage coming through, unfortunately. Actually, it will be a little bit more, as the Maokai Reaper will be able to see something slain. I'm going to lose both my Dreg Dredgers off the bottom. That's where they were, guys. Would have loved to have seen you a little bit earlier, but that is okay. And I will lose this second Thorny Toad at the end of the turn as is. I'm going to go ahead and pop the Lure of the Depths here. Pick up a different card, and I think what I want to do as well is come down with a Maokai. Now, on my next turn, if I play a unit, he'll summon out a sapling. I can challenge the Kindred with the sapling in order to get a little bit of value off of that, a little bit of damage, and then I can Grasp of the Undying to finish off the Kindred, hopefully. So before they can flip, because they only have to see 2 units executed. I think Kindred's a really good unit here, but we'll see how that goes. Now, obviously, you do have the Undying revived here. Playing this out will not actually let me Grasp of the Undying anything, so I think what I want to do here is just go for a Naked Grasp. No, because I can't do that because I won't be able to get any damage down and then drop the Devourer of the Depths. So instead, I think what we are going to do is Devour the Depths, but we're going to obliterate the... Let's go ahead and obliterate one of the Undyings, because that'll reset him in order to stop him from getting those Undyings larger than they already are. Now, like I said, you can respond to this ability, so I would not be surprised if he does play something to limit the damage he takes, or in order to remove my own card, I would not be surprised at all. And especially if he does kill something of mine here, he will be able to double up with the Kindred, get the flip, and I think I just die off of that, but the Obliterate is going to go through. I do have the Sapling in order to challenge, hopefully deal some damage to the Kindred. And yeah, that is going to be the Spirit Leech, so Maokai is actually going to die here. Kindred will be able to get their mark, unfortunately, which is really, really bad for me, but at least we are going to try and get some degree of damage onto them, and at least be able to Grasp of the Undying them on the backside. We are going to trade out aggressively here just to get the Spirit Leech, because it's a lot of damage coming my way on the next turn, especially given that I have nothing on board. Okay, into the Cursed Keeper, which he has no way of removing it unless he wants to Glimpse the Beyond, and that is going to be the Kindred flip, which I've seen very few people playing this, so actually first time I've actually seen that effect. And they get +2/+2 the first time they slay a unit each round, which is pretty scary, but we're still working our way towards deep. Terror of the Tides did get tossed there, but that's totally fine. We're still 20 cards away, though, which is really not good. This should just be an open attack, as he's got a lot of damage coming my way. I've only got 9 mana, unfortunately, so while I would have liked to have used 2 Grasps on the Undying, I think I may be dead here unless I can kill the Kindred, get the 3 life heal, which will only be 2 life, unfortunately, because I am at 18. He's got the Right of Negation, so unfortunately, I believe that's actually death for me, as I'm healing nothing, and this is a lot of damage. Yeah, so unfortunately wasn't able to stabilize. The Kindred actually really, really brutal into this deck, as both of my champions are low-power champions. They just die to a Kindred mark as long as they can kill anything else, and since most of my deck is about basically throwing units in the way of powerful enemies in order to just survive long enough. The problem is they're setting up other units to also get killed, and I'm just getting 2 for 1 the whole time. That Maokai Reaper got way too big, as are the Undyings, and unfortunately we couldn't pull that one out, but at least that does show off the deck in a situation where it's not doing so hot. So I hope at the very least that was interesting for you guys to see, and that's actually going to be it for me tonight, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching the games. I hope you learned something interesting. I hope you like seeing this deck. NautKai Sea Monsters is one of my favorite decks to play, so really, really fun one to show off there, guys. But then if you guys have any comments about things I could have done differently or ways I could have built the deck differently, go ahead and let me know. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload Legends of Runeterra content every Sunday, and regular League of Legends content on Mondays, Fridays, and patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.